Good morning, everybody. This is George Anto, and today we'll be doing a session on the Jeeto Minivan. It's the launch frenzy of the Jeeto Minivan across the country, so it's just we rolling with the bus. So let's start today's webinar. You can see the display image of the Jeeto Minivan. It looks like quite an exciting product. There are some changes which certainly have been done to the Jeeto. We can say that it's way too different. If you spend some time with the vehicle and go and sit inside and get the feel of it, certainly you'd be able to make a lot of connections as to how things are. Okay, so let's get started. Firstly, we'll talk about the technical specifications. It's a diesel vehicle, all right, like the engine capacity is 625 cc. So that's the displacement capacity of, say, the cylinder. Then the next question comes, what are the power and torque figures? So it's got 16 horsepower, all right, like so, which you'll get at 3600 RPM, all right. And then when you talk about torque, you have 38 Newton meters of torque available in the range of, say, 1200 to 2200 RPM. So it's like pretty good when it comes to like a car of a vehicle of this class, you can say. So a good amount of torque would certainly translate to more pulling power. So when it comes to, say, the Jeeto Minivan, it is supposed to ferry people. So when it comes to the driver, the driver would not be driving alone. So you have options like, you can check out like the third last line. The seating capacity has D+3, D+4 and D+5. So what that translates to is like driver plus 3 additional people, then driver plus 4 additional people, and then driver plus 5 additional people. All right, so that is one thing. So there are like options available. Then if we're talking about like what's the format of Transaxle, it's got the manual synchro mesh. Okay, so manual synchro mesh is like usually a manual operated transmission, you can say, in which the change of gears would take place between gears that are already revolving at the same speed. All right, it's like the generic stuff. So how many gears it has? If you ask that, it would have 4 forward and 1 reverse gears. Okay, and then comes the topic of suspension, like what kind of suspension does it have at the front and the rear. So you can say it's got MacPherson strut with coil spring and anti-roll bars for the front, and for the rear it's got semi-trailing arm with coil spring and shock absorber. All right, so again, which is pretty much good for a vehicle in this particular class. So depending on the requirement, if you're talking about, because the Jeeto Minivan would not be really specific to like the city-based driving scenarios. So in like a lot of small towns, like the tier 2, tier 3 kind of like cities, so over there also, and also like a lot of like villages or the outskirts, if you're talking about, so those places you will have a lot of guys who would actually be using this vehicle. So you can't be really sure whether the road quality is good or not. It could be like the paved road, unpaved road, or like uneven surfaces. So if you have like good suspension, obviously it is good for everybody. So then you have brakes. So we have separate slides, right, like for the brake based discussion. So currently what I would say is it's got the disc brake at the front, drum brakes at the rear, and there's something called as TLSPV. We'll come to that later. All right, then there are more numbers which you can simply like scan through. What's the gross weight, curb weight? Let keep things simple, like depending on, say, the variant. So it has got like 3 options, like D+3, D+4 and the D+5. So the gross weight and curb weight numbers keep like basically increasing gradually when it comes to like comparing with like individual variants from D3 towards D5. Okay, D+3 towards D+5. Okay, let's move ahead. So if you want to get again like a feel of, for example, like how does the vehicle look from the front, from the side, from the rear, or like when you're actually gonna be spending some time with it. So this is how it looks. Like the top left talks about like the view from the front, we can say. All right, it looks like pretty good. And then the rear view, you can see like on the top right that it's got the semi-hard top, all right, and it's got the half tailgate. So you can simply open this, and like you have access for people to simply climb upon. So it is just like that, all right? Like this particular tailgate, half tailgate, you can actually open it up, all right? Then you have the half side door. It's this door we're talking about. So like you can simply open it, and again this is also easy ingress like for people to like get into the vehicle. So people sitting in the second row, obviously, like they'll have to access via this particular door, okay, on the left side. Then the next discussion comes, like how does the vehicle look from the inside, okay? So you can just take a quick look. Okay, the pictures basically like speak it all. So the instrument panel is like nice and wide, right? Like basically it's just gonna serve the requirement for a vehicle in this particular class, all right? So that is what I'm talking about. So if you're talking about, say, the driver and co-driver seat, so this is how it looks like, okay? So somebody who's sitting, or like if a person sits along with the kid also, so then like there is sufficient space, you can say, and like a good amount of leg room as well. So at the rear there is again like a good amount of space for anybody who's like going to be sitting, okay? And like when it comes to the D+5 seating capacity, you can check this additional seat which is put over here, just like, you know, behind, say, the driver's seat, okay? So 3 people will sit here, 1 person sits here, that is like 4 people at the back, okay? And like 1 person in the co-driver, that is like 5 people apart from the driver. So a lot of options are given depending on like who prefers like what kind of format. So seating positions we are discussing. So before you take 5 people along with you and take a test drive, it is just like, you know, gonna be a picture which makes it very, very clear, like how exactly would people be sitting. And when you're talking about D+5, that is what basically makes sense. So this is how the 5th person is going to be sitting, okay? So the leg room which we had, which is a sufficient amount of leg room, it basically like just gonna make, say, like the seating posture convenient for this particular person, all right? So yeah, D+3, D+4, D+5. Let's move ahead. Then we have more numbers to basically munch and chew. That is numbers like what's the front track, what's the rear track, what's the wheelbase, all right? So what is, say, the height of the vehicle, or say the length of the vehicle, all those kind of questions. So what's the width of the vehicle? So the front track is 1305 mm, all right, and the rear track is 1290 mm, okay, and the wheelbase is 2250, all right? So it's like pretty basically stable when it comes to driving, okay? Let's move ahead. Now let's talk about the engine specifications, okay? So first question is which kind of engine does it have? It's got the single cylinder diesel engine, all right? And what's it called? It's called the Endura single cylinder diesel engine, all right? And displacement we spoke about, it's got 625 cc's, right? And I think we spoke about this as well. So it's got 16 horsepower and 38 Newton meters torque, and it complies to BS4 emission norms, all right? So these are like the quick points which you can make a note of, or like you can simply remember if you were to talk about it to somebody, or like simply make a note of it. Then we're talking about the Jeeto Minivan, right? So there were a lot of videos which we've been circulating since the previous year, the special tool based videos. So you know, in that series there also like was a video about, say, the stretch belt like removal installation. So there's a tool available for the removal and installation for the stretch belt, okay? Then engine power is, say, 16 horsepower, only 16 horsepower variant option is available, we can say, okay? Then after that we're talking about specifications for the Transaxle. So we just spoke about like what's the engine got to do, or what's the engine, what does the engine have basically, what's the specification of the engine. Then if we're talking about Transaxle, we spoke about it, right? Like it's got 4 forward gears and 1 reverse gears. Now comes like the list of gear ratios. Now I'm not gonna go, like point by point as to like what are the gear ratio numbers. There's just like you can quickly go through. Okay, what is interesting over here is the final drive ratio. Okay, the heavy duty, that is 6.44 or 44:1. So it's all about, you can say, being able to pull more people, like at the optimum speeds, you can say. All right. So only heavy duty Transaxle is available. Okay. So whichever gear you shift into, you have sufficient pulling power, which makes the ferrying of people like quite a breeze. Then what's the kind of suspension and what's the format of steering for this vehicle when it comes to the Jeeto Minivan? So steering system has got the manual steering column, right, and the rack and pinion steering, we can say. Then suspension, we spoke about it initially. It's got the independent suspension when it comes to like the MacPherson strut type front suspension. Okay, and for the rear, it's got the semi-trailing independent rear suspension. Okay, with gas-filled shocks. All right. So obviously, people sitting in the front or people sitting at the rear, even if the car bumps into any potholes or like goes via any like hump on the road, it's not going to be like causing much discomfort to the people who are sitting when the car is being driven in, say, uneven territory. So the IFS and IRS ultimately makes it quite like comfortable when it comes to the ride aspect. Okay. Then let's talk about the brake system. All right. So that it is having disc brake on the front and drum brake at the rear. We spoke about it. So initially, when we highlighted the topic of brakes, I said we will talk about TLSPV later. So now we'll be discussing as to like what exactly TLSPV is all about. TLSPV stands for twin LSPV. All right. So now people ask the first question, all right, like twin LSPV. Okay, we get the name, but what does LSPV stand for? You can simply say LSPV means what? LSPV means load sensing proportionating valve. All right, or a lot of people call it load sensing pressure valve as well. Okay, so like in Mahindra terms, we use the terminology load sensing proportionating valve. Okay, so the thing is like the more load, the more load there is on the vehicle, the more pressure basically like there is on the rear brakes. So at the time of braking, what is going to happen, that there is the mass transfer which happens. The load basically like is going to travel towards the front. So in that case, what LSPV would do is like prevent the rear wheels from locking. Okay, so when we're talking about twin LSPV, it senses the rear axle travel and adjusts the brake line pressure to both front and rear wheels. Okay, because it's got the X-split braking circuit. All right, so X-split means like your front right and your rear left wheels are connected, and your front left and your rear right wheels are connected, and it's got say 4 ports. The LSPV, the twin LSPV has 4 ports. So when say the LSPV is like doing the regulation, okay, that time basically it applies on the front as well as at the rear wheels at the same time, you can say. Okay, so without LSPV, the brake line pressure would have caused the wheels to lock. So LSPV, if you have, it will simply prevent the locking from occurring. So that is like the benefit, we can say. So in this vehicle, like the twin LSPV makes braking more effective, like for its specific design, because it's a minivan. Okay, so obviously, so when you're talking about how the vehicle should behave when it is braked at a curve, or like when it is braked at a certain speed in straight roads, so it has to be like stable. Okay, so which it pretty is. All right, so that's some briefing about twin LSPV. Now let's move ahead. Now we can talk about the air intake system. All right. So the air intake system in the Jeeto Minivan, the new vehicle which we are highlighting over here, it's like the air intake is through the right hand frame, okay, in the minivan. Okay. So in the Jeeto load carrier, air intake like was through the left hand frame. So like the side has changed now. Then you can look at this figure. Over here you can see the front snorkel. Okay, that is where it is. And you also can check out something called as the pre-cleaner. So where is the pre-cleaner? You simply can locate it over here in this figure, like the one in yellow. All right. So now what exactly is the role of a pre-cleaner? If you ask that question, we can discuss a few points. You can say the pre-cleaner's got aerodynamically designed fins at its inlet, okay, which gives the entering air a cyclonic motion. So right, the fins would give the incoming air a cyclonic motion. Then the heavy dust particles would get centrifuged in the outer area of the pre-cleaner, and it would get ejected out through the dust evacuator valve. So there is a dust evacuator valve by which any of the dust is gonna get expelled. So it is operated by engine vacuum anyways, all right? So that's the idea. So if there is dust accumulation which occurs, the valve opens up and it simply expels the dust. So what you gotta ensure when it comes to say the orientation or the fitment of the pre-cleaner is, you have to just make sure that the dust evacuator valve outlet is oriented downward, okay, and towards the air cleaner side. So when it comes to say the removal or say the inspection part, you just got to ensure this particular aspect. Okay, so let's move ahead. We just spoke about the pre-cleaner. Now we can talk about the air cleaner change interval. All right, so change intervals you can check out. There are two options given. So it depends on your driving conditions. Where were you driving the car? So if you're a kind of person who's driving on paved roads or say normal operating conditions, in that case, like your air cleaner change intervals, looks something like this. So cleaning would get done every 5,000 kilometers and the replacement would get every 20,000 kilometers. So you have say more range over here. And when it comes to a person who's driving the car in unpaved roads or say dusty operating conditions, in that case, okay, the cleaning stays at say 5,000 kilometers, like in the previous case, and the replacement is every 10,000 kilometers. Right? Like that means 10,000 kilometers you nail a clock, you gotta simply change the air cleaner. So now it depends on the customer drives the car in which territory. So obviously nobody would come and say, I gotta keep my performance is going low, I gotta keep changing the air cleaner regularly. The dealership guys is saying me to do so. It depends on where the person is driving the car. You have more dust, obviously you gotta be changing it much more frequently. Okay, so let's move ahead. Now we can talk about the cooling system. So just some change points which I would be highlighting over here. You can just take a quick look in the figure. Firstly, if you ask the question how things were in the Jeeto load carrier, okay, like the earlier vehicle, you can simply say the Jeeto load carrier, okay, the radiator and cooling fan is fitted in the middle of the engine. So we're talking about the load carrier. Now this is the passenger vehicle, okay, passenger carrier vehicle. It's a minivan. So things are obviously a little modified, which is all about making provision for the comfortable seating position of the people inside the vehicle, you can say. So in this case, the radiator, cooling fan and the stone guard is fitted in the rear side behind the engine. All right, so the engine is over here at the rear. So the radiator, cooling fan and stone guard is fitted at the rear side behind the engine. In the load carrier, obviously this is the load carrier. So it was for ferrying goods and say, small cargo. So nobody was sitting over here. That requirement was not there. So things were certainly different. Okay. So let's be aware of it. Let's move ahead. Now we can talk about the fuel system bleeding. Now, if you've logged into say YouTube. Okay, we have this channel called as Mahindra DIY, where we have put these videos on YouTube, like how you do the fuel system bleeding or like airlock removal, that particular procedure. So the fuel filter needs to be bled whenever there is an airlock. That is when you need to say bleed the fuel filter, okay, or like say do the fuel system bleeding. Then the airlock can happen due to, like, a bunch of reasons. Like the first reason could be, say, you're running out of fuel, and say the second reason could be like when you're doing the fuel filter replacement. That is when airlock could happen. So if you want to say remove the airlock, you need to basically like do the bleeding process. So now you can look at this chart, all right, like as to how and like what exactly needs to be done when it comes to the fuel system bleeding. So the first step is you put the ignition in the on position, all right, and then you do what? Then you press and hold the brake pedal, and after that you start pumping the accelerator. That means 3 times you press and release the accelerator pedal, okay, and then 4th time you got to press and hold it. Hold what? Hold the accelerator pedal, okay. So that is like the first sequence which you need to do. So after that, what happens after you have held the accelerator pedal, like in the pressed position, after pressing it twice, fourth time you are keeping it pressed, held. So you see the engine lamp which starts blinking, right, like in a few seconds, okay. So once the lamp goes blinking, what you're going to do, you got to release the brake pedal and then you release the accelerator pedal, okay. Like after releasing the accelerator pedal, what happens? You got to basically wait till the engine check lamp switches off. Now there is like a time limit, okay, like as to like how much time it would take for the lamp to switch off. Approximately 90 seconds, all right. So 1.5 minutes, that is what this clock shows over here, okay. And then like once the engine check lamp simply vanishes, what you can do is you can start the engine and like simply get going. That's it. So like what we're discussing with the fuel system bleeding procedure. So now you don't basically need to ensure that the customer remembers these procedures and all that. So it's anyways, the customer is not going to do this particular sequence. It is like obviously the people in the dealership who would be performing this job. So to make it simple, what has been done is like the driver side sun visor, there's like a particular sticker which is like made available. So obviously like people are not gonna bother people from Mahindra and Mahindra, be the CCMs or like anybody who's dealing with the product. So when it comes to how exactly you do this particular sequence, okay. So as I said, we've already made these videos and we've put on YouTube. So if you feel you need to actually check out how things are done, you can go online and you can check it out. All right, let's move ahead. Now we can just check out like how does the instrument cluster look like. So you sit in the vehicle, you put the key in the on position, you see the lamps glowing in the instrument cluster. So again, why we need to be aware of these telltale lamps? Let's keep it simple. If like somebody is a new customer and you say you're talking to him, obviously you can brief him or certain points, right, like about the vehicle. So like where is the telltale zone, okay, like all that. So if like on the right side you check out, so this is the low fuel warning telltale with the buzzer, and over here you can check out the high temperature warning telltale with the buzzer, right. You have the odometer on the LCD. So this is the LCD, okay, where you have the odometer, okay. Then you have the trip A, trip B, like readings as well, which you can take. Then you have the set switch, then you have the mode switch, all that, okay. You simply can spend some time and ultimately get acquainted. So you have 2 bars over here, one is on the left and one is on the right. So the left bar stands for, say, the coolant temperature gauge, okay, that's the temperature gauge bar, and graph over here you can see, and like the other like graph for the bars which you see over here. So that is for the fuel gauge. So that's the fuel gauge. So you have like the full position, empty position. Okay, so obviously it is simple for somebody who's spending time with the vehicle to get used to these terms and like the display in the instrument cluster. All right. Then you have the stepper motor type speedometer in the case of again like the Jeeto Minivan. Okay, just like pretty similar. There's also a digital clock on the LCD. Let's move ahead. Now we can look out the electrical. So check out the electricals in the vehicle. So where is the battery? If you ask that question, it's on the rear left hand side, right? Like this particular box, yellow box, which you can see, the highlighted portion, or the cover is the black cover. Obviously, you open it up, you can see the battery, and the next thing on the rear is the EMS ECU location, right? Just like behind the rear seat on the right hand side. So your EMS ECU and your engine fuse box location is on the rear right hand side, right? So like this is like the picture which highlights it very clearly. Then the passenger compartment fuse box is where is like under the instrument panel, like on the co-driver side, right? Just like under the glove box, you can say. This is how it looks like. Okay. So let's move ahead. Now you can again check out some mechanisms which is there in the Jeeto Minivan. So it's got the half tailgate. We spoke about that. So this is the latch. Okay, it also like comes with stickers. So this is the mechanism of like the half tailgate, which basically like operates it. You can see when it comes to say having it open. Then you can see the ORVMs on both the sides and the IRVM, and you have the wiper motor with arm and blade. All right, so it's like all the generic systems which is out there. It is just like labeled, highlighted. So I'm not gonna like spend more time like in this particular slide. Let's move simply ahead. Then the question comes like, okay, how do I access the engine compartment? So to access the engine compartment, first of all, what are you supposed to do? You got to roll down the rear seat on the first place, okay, and open the panel, okay, this panel, to access the engine compartment. So what do? You remove the rear seat bolts, all right, and then like you roll down the seats, and like that is how you have access to this panel. Then you got to simply open this tray, and that's your engine compartment. So again, there's the technicians who work on this vehicle, they are pretty much familiar anyways in the load carrier also, like they know how they used to access the engine compartment. Okay, so anyways in this vehicle they have to do it from the rear. So the load carrier was a little different thing. So minivan, the engine is at the rear, so you don't basically go somewhere in the central portion of the vehicle. All right, so let's move ahead. Now we can check out again basic stuff like where is the warning triangle, where is the jack located, where are the tools. Okay, so warning triangle is behind the driver's seat. So the driver's seat, just behind it, you would find the warning triangle. Okay, and the jack and the tool location is below the co-driver's seat. So there's the co-driver's seat, and below the co-driver's seat you would locate the jack and the tools. All right, and that's how the tool kit looks like. So you have a long screwdriver, okay, to remove the headlamp, and a modified wheel spanner, and okay, to remove and refit the rear seat bolts. So just like the wheel spanner end is like kind of modified. All right, let's move ahead. So we'll just speak what is very specific for this presentation. That's it. So next comes like spare wheel. If I were to say remove the spare wheel, how do I do that? So this is where the the access point is out there, like to start opening the spare wheel. You gotta say open the rear door, like there's this rubber cap over here, like you open this, and then you take your spanner and you'll have access say to the wheel nut. Okay, so then you start like say opening, and from the bottom what would happen is like the spare wheel would start dropping down. You can see in this picture he is like operating the wheel spanner with one hand, and like he is holding the like dropping wheel with his other hand. All right, so let's move ahead. Then jacking points, you must be pretty much aware that every car we talk about, we always emphasize the importance of jacking points. So it's like the purpose is simple. Whenever you go to a dealerships, technicians, okay, it's like they are trained, we understand that, but obviously it's not the same technician who's out there, like for a very long time in some of the dealerships. People keep like changing roles, so there could be a new person who's on the job. So every now and then you got to keep ensuring whether they are following the standard procedures. So these jacking points are reinforced areas like under which you place the head of the jack, right, and then you go about lifting the vehicle. Anywhere else you put the jack and like start raising, obviously that is simply going to damage the vehicle's underbody, you can say. All right, so you got to just ensure that anybody who's raising the vehicle in dealership, okay, like for performing any jobs, obviously they should put the head of the jack just below the jacking points and ultimately raise the vehicle. All right, then comes the question of how do you tow the vehicle. You have the tow hook, okay, which you basically attach it on the front portion of this vehicle, okay, towards the bottom. That's a tow hook location. All right, so in case of a breakdown, so this is how you basically connect your tow hook and go about towing. Okay, so let's move ahead. So in the toolkit you have the tow hook available. This is the tow hook which is highlighted over here. Let's move ahead. So the next question comes, if I want to access the maintenance point, so like where is it? So anyways, when you open the half tailgate, okay, just like behind the rear seat, so you have these access points for say the coolant filling tank, okay, then the coolant level check. You just want to see like the visual check, you can open the central access point and ultimately check out the coolant levels. All right, and then like the third particular point which you have over here, so that is like for the engine oil dipstick. So you have these 3 points which you can simply open up and like get your job done. That's it. So we spoke about how do you basically say if you were to access the engine, obviously you got to tumble the seats, okay, roll down this rear second row seat, right? That's different. Okay, so you can use this panel which is available in the toolkit. All right, so even if the customer wanted to do, he simply can do it on his own. So let's move ahead. Now we can check out which are the maintenance fluids, like which fluid you put for engine and which oil you use for transmission. They are that list, and at what is the changing interval. So the engine oil which we use for the Jeeto Minivan is Maximile Premium Eco. Okay, that's the new engine oil. Okay, like so 2 liters would be the quantity for it, and the replacement intervals like first change is 5,000 kilometers, then 10,000 kilometers, and afterwards like every subsequent 10,000 kilometers you gotta change the engine oil. That is like the first thing. Then oil filter, okay, like it's a Mahindra Maximile Mini. So again the change intervals aligns with the engine oil's numbers. Then fuel filter, you have to change every 30,000 kilometers. So the first change comes at 30,000, then every subsequent 30,000 kilometers you change the fuel filter. Then if you're talking about coolant, okay, so you use Mahindra Maximile Ultra Cool. That's the coolant. 2 liters is the coolant capacity. So for coolant you need to change it at every 40,000 kilometers. All right, then for the transmission, which oil would you use? That's Mahindra Maximile Synchro UV2, and its capacity is 1.25 liters. So the first change interval for the transmission fluid comes at 20,000 kilometers, and after that, say every 40,000 kilometers, you got to change the transmission fluid. All right, and brake fluid, the quantity is 0.6 liters. It's Mahindra Maximile .3. So it's like every 30,000 kilometers you change the brake fluid. So the service interval for is like every 5,000 kilometers actually for this vehicle. So the purpose of this vehicle is like ferrying people, obviously, so to ensure that there is not abuse happening. So it is better if the person follows this particular the procedure laid by the manufacturer. Like every 5,000 kilometers you gotta get your vehicle serviced. So for more information you can certainly go through the maintenance manual. So like these manuals are released now, okay, so you can go and check it out. So on TechNet Mahindra you can anyways go and check it. So warranty is how much? So standard warranty is 2 years or 40,000 kilometers, right? And emission warranty is like 1 year or 80,000 kilometers, whichever occurs earlier, okay, from the date of sale of the vehicle. So any other information related to warranty, if you want to say check it out, you can simply go through say the warranty information guide, okay, and the maintenance guide. Then for diagnostics, like what needs to be done, you have diagnostic tools available, okay, like on TechNet. Anyways, you have say the Bosch Mini Smart diagnostic tool, then the iSmart and the Android Mini Smart, whichever tool you're using, obviously, like you have like say the data sets available, okay. So when it comes to like going through manuals or downloading manuals, you can simply visit TechNet Mahindra. You have the repair manual, diagnostic manuals, all sorts of manuals available over there, which you can simply like download and go through it, right? For dealership guys, you must be aware of it. They're using all sorts of tools, be it Bosch Mini Smart or iSmart or Android Mini Smart. With these tools, obviously, like you can do the diagnostics for this vehicle. Then we have the EPC website as well. So any parts related information, or you want to check out like simply like the codes for like individual parts. So all that information is available on the EPC website. You can simply like check out this link and log into it and go through it. Like if you want more details related to like engine part, transmission parts, or like whichever parts related information, you will certainly get it over there. So that's it. So this was a pretty short session. So we just spoke about the specifics which we had in the Jeeto Minivan, right? So like what all stuff were kept common, we did not dig into all that. So we just mostly discussed about like the change points when we compare with say the load carrier, okay, like vis-a-vis the minivan option. So that's it. So we are done.